And welcome back. In today's California housing market update, we're going to talk about the county-wide level, what's happening at each of the counties here in California. If you missed my previous video, I posted that a couple of days ago, looking at the state as a whole, looking at home prices, home sales, and much, much more. But I'm going to share the county because, of course, real estate is local. We're going to talk about a lot of stats in today's video, including 3 counties in which inventory or the amount of houses for sale there has doubled compared to 1 year ago. So this lock-in effect is actually easing here in California. So here's a slide I actually shared in my previous video. Again, I'll provide a link in the video description below for that. So I want to share this because I'm going to share how each of the major regions in California fared compared to the statewide averages. So home sales, again, this is excluding brand new houses. We're only looking at older houses here, excluding brand new homes. Anyways, sales rose by 4.9% from March last year through March of 2025. So up by about 5%. Home prices based on the median sold price in California that rose by 3.5%. In days in the market, it takes around 22 days to sell a house. You list your home for sale, you accept an offer from home buyer in about 22 days on average. So homes taking about 3 weeks to sell. So remember these factors here. So let's have a look at SoCal. So SoCal sales actually were more or less flat compared to 1 year ago. Whereas again, the state as a whole, it's up by nearly 5%. So sales decreasing down by a little bit from a year ago. But home prices are up by 3.3% in line with a statewide average, up by 3.5%. Homes taking about 25 days to sell. The month supply at 3.6 months. And this is also in line with the statewide average. The sale price to final list price ratio is at 100%. Means that out of all the houses that did sell in March, they sold for the seller's final list price on average. So let's take a look at the Central Coast. Sales really tanked, down by 6.7% year over year, but prices rose by 16.6%. I'm guessing there might be a more mix of more expensive properties that sold this March compared to 12 months ago. But if you guys are located in the Central Coast, let me know what's going on there. Home prices around $1.1 million is the median sold price. This does not mean that if you own a home in the Central Coast that your home value rose by 17% in 1 month. We're only talking about closed home sales. So therefore the mix in sales can kind of skew the figures here. Month supply at 3.8 months. These other figures are more or less in line with historical norms, except for this. Homes on average selling about 1.5% less than the seller's asking price. In the Central Valley, you guys all know I'm a realtor here in the greater Sacramento area. We also covered the Bay Area as well, the East Bay. Anyways, sales rose by 2.5%. And home prices, based on the median sold price, in line with the statewide average. And these other metrics below also in line with the state as a whole. In the Bay Area, I have some really big changes there. I'm going to share the counties in the Bay Area regarding home prices and home sales, and also inventory. Very, very big differences here. So home sales rose by 6.5. Home prices are more or less flat, only up by 1%. These other metrics tend to be a lot more competitive compared to other markets, especially the far north, because homes are still selling very, very quickly, taking about 2 weeks to sell, and homes on average selling about 2.5% over the seller's asking price. I'm going to touch on that here in a little bit because it is entirely normal for home sellers and agents to list homes for sale that are the asking price is far less than market value. That is entirely common. For whatever reason, homes get listed for sale for below market value. So go figure, homes on average are selling for over the seller's asking price. And the data actually supports that. Well, I'll share with you guys in a little bit. The far north is much softer of a market. Sales are down 1.2 and home prices up by 3.4%. And these metrics below are also tend to be a lot less competitive compared to other markets. All right, sales. I went over this in my previous video. So sales again rose by 4.9%. Yet on a month-to-month basis, this is February compared to March, it decreased by 2.3%. Again, I went over this in great detail in my other video, but sales right now are more or less in line with 2008, but it had been for about 2.5 years. So let's look at sales by region. So much of the statewide averages is really what's happening in SoCal, because 45% of all home sales in the state all come from SoCal. So that's basically the combination of the Central Valley and also the San Francisco Bay Area, which would be about 44%. All right, moving on, let's talk about home prices in the state as a whole. Again, we're at 884,000. That's the median sold price in March. That's up 6.7% compared to February, a seasonal increase, but up by 3.5% year over year. Like I mentioned in my other video, at 884,000, this is actually really close to the all-time record highs that was set back in 2024 at $908,000. So we're not too far off the all-time record high, but as I'll share with you guys, the increase of inventory is going to put downward pressure on home prices. So I do not expect to see a record breaking home prices anytime soon, at least based on the median sold price. So let's talk about this here, because this is a little bit confusing. And of course, I want to provide value to you guys to kind of educate you guys about what's actually happening, right? So it's actually normal to see home prices increase in March compared to February, right? That is a seasonal increase. On top of that, the gain of 6.7% compared to last month is more or less in line with historical averages, but the gain of 3.5% from 12 months ago is actually much less than the 9% average this time of year. So March to March, going back to the year of 2010, based on my nerdy analysis, is up by 9%. So historically speaking, we should be up by about 9%, but this year we're only up by 3.5%. Also, like I mentioned, given the rise of the number of homes for sale or house inventory, this should limit home price growth in the months to come. However, I do not expect to see a crash or a huge correction in home prices due to the fact that inventory is still historically low, also more or less in line with pre-COVID levels. And of course, I'll share with you guys that here in a little bit. Like I mentioned, homes on average are selling for the seller's asking price on average. Has been a common trend for quite some time as well. So here's something really, really interesting here. Here's the number of homes selling above the seller's asking price by county. So right now, there's only 6 counties in California in which on average, they're selling over the seller's asking price. And on top of that, every single one of these is actually located in the Bay Area. So like I mentioned, this is kind of like artificially inflated because it's commonplace for homes to be listed for sale for below market value. So, go figure, homes are selling for over the seller's asking price more often than not in Santa Clara, San Francisco, Alameda County, San Mateo, Contra Costa County, and Marin. In contrast, in Sacramento County, like I mentioned right here, Sacramento is number 10 on this list. So the 10th highest share of houses selling over the seller's asking price. So that's kind of like eye-opening because agents in my neck of the woods tend to price houses in line with current market value instead of the Bay Area, where they might list a home for sale for, let's just say, $1.5 million, but really the market value is like $2 million or $1.9 million. So go figure, it sells for over 1.5 and it ends up selling close to market value. In Sacramento, agents on average tend to list homes for market value or as close to market value as possible. So it's a much different market here than the Bay Area, for example. So based on this chart, in Sacramento, around 40% of homes that did sell in March sold over asking. But of course, this means that 60% sold at or below the seller's asking price. Of course, please leave me a comment below with your thoughts regarding this chart right here. So my biggest takeaway here is, of course, the Bay Area. No big surprises here. This is a big common trend we have been seeing. But look at Napa, Amador, and El Dorado County. They're way down this list right here. So only around 30% are selling over the seller's asking price, far less than the 80% we're seeing in Santa Clara. All right, let's change gears slightly here and talk about inventory numbers. So again, for the state as a whole, the month supply is at 3.5 months. That's this right here. 1 year ago this time, it was at 2.6 months. And I love how they share this because this goes all the way back until January of 2005. And look at the Great Recession, '07, '08. I mean, the month supply was absolutely skyrocketing, way different than what we're seeing right now, right? So I have a couple of things I want to share regarding this. I had a look at historical trends going all the way back until the 1990s to have a look at how these figures compare to years past, right? So one of the reasons why the market is not crashing in California is due to a low level of supply, historically speaking. So for example, the all-time record high regarding the month supply was at a 17-month supply back in January of 2008. Now it's only 3.5 months. So big picture, kind of taking a step back here, in order to have a buyer's market in which buyers have a clear advantage over home sellers, and therefore they have a lot of negotiating power, we would need to see the month supply over 6 months. Now it's only at 3.5 months. This is why home prices absolutely crashed in '08 and '09 because the month supply was at 17 months, right? Now we're only at 3.5 months. It has been increasing slightly over the past year or so, but not skyrocketing like we saw in '06, '07 as well. On top of that, when I actually did some research for you guys regarding this, I want to have a look at how the figure right now at 3.5 months compared to pre-COVID. So for example, back in March of 2019, we had a 3.6 month supply. Now we're at 3.5. So we're more or less in line with historical averages looking at pre-COVID. However, this is something you guys should definitely be aware of, which I'll definitely be tracking and sharing with you guys here on a monthly basis, is that inventory has been increasing big time as of late. It rose by 54.3% year over year. That's the biggest growth or the strongest growth since January of 2023, which again should put downward pressure on home prices. I'm not saying to crash because the month supply is still very, very low. But this again, the sharp rise of inventory is really due to the fact that sales are down or sales are relatively flat. And on top of that, we're seeing a big increase in the number of people who are listing their homes for sale, or what's also called new listings. That rose by nearly 25%. That increase for the third consecutive month in which new listings rose by over 20% year over year. However, we're still less than pre-COVID levels, which I shared with you guys in my previous video. So let's move on here. This is again one of the reasons why we're seeing inventory increasing because of this right here. This is sales in orange, and in gray is a percent increase in active listings or housing inventory. So just for example, in the Bay Area, sales only increased by 6.5% year over year, even though there's 73% more homes for sale. So therefore, just taking a step back here, the reason why active listings is rising so much is because we're not seeing a reciprocal increase of sales, right? Sales only rose by 6.5%, despite the fact there's 73% more homes for sale. So we're seeing a low level of sales. We're seeing a big increase of new listings, which is causing active listings or inventory to increase quite a bit. And this, of course, is also true in the Central Coast, the Central Valley, and the far north as well, and SoCal, where we have a lot more inventory compared to sales. Now, speaking of that, let's take a look at housing supply or housing inventory by each of the counties that the California Association of Realtors tracks. These slides are from them. I actually had to do some digging for you guys because their text actually got cut off. So here is the actual chart here. I had to go to convert this to a presentation and then enlarge it so you guys can actually see which counties they're actually talking about here. So in Alameda County, Contra Costa, all located in the East Bay, big increase of inventory. If you guys are watching my video, you guys are an agent or you live in the Bay Area, let us know what you guys are seeing, because based on this, the charts we're seeing right here, inventory is absolutely skyrocketing in Alameda, up by over 180%. Contra Costa County is up by over 160%. So these two counties are experiencing big gains of inventory, which again, economics 101, right? The balance between supply and demand. If supply rises big time without a big increase in sales, of course, that's going to put downward pressure on home prices. We're also seeing big gains over 80% in Orange County, Kings County, Imperial, and San Joaquin, as well as Ventura counties. In contrast, in Sacramento and El Dorado County, inventory is only up by about 40 to about 50% year over year. And on top of that, looking at the bottom of this list, San Mateo County has barely increased, up by about 20% year over year, much different than the East Bay, more than doubling year over year. All right, let's also talk about how fast homes are selling on average. So this March, it's taken about 22 days to sell a home. Again, 1 year ago, it was at 18 days. So be careful of the headlines, right? So this means that it's taking about 22% longer on average to sell a home in California. But in actuality, this only means a 3-day difference, right? Homes taking about 3 days longer to sell, only 3 days, but that's a giant increase, up by 22%. So we're seeing a small increase from a small number, hence the big percentage increase. All right, let's also have a look at how each of these regions and counties fare regarding prices and home sales. So for I just kind of like a big picture here, 75% of California's counties have higher home prices than 1 year ago. Of course, I'm talking about the median sold price based on closed home sales. So for comparison's sake, I had to do some research on this. Back in January, it was only 64% of the market. So the market has kind of improved maybe because we have more counties in which home prices are up compared to 1 year ago than we did back in January this year. However, with the rise of inventory, this is going to put downward pressure on prices. So of course, stay tuned for the latest developments on that. In regards to home sales are up in about half of counties and down in about half of California's counties. So therefore, it's kind of like a mixed bag. So let's look at this. So prices are up by 3.5% year over year for the state as a whole. Sales up by 4.9%. Again, we talked about the big increase in prices in the Central Coast, yet sales decreased by 6.7%. So let's take a look at the San Francisco Bay Area. So there's actually 4 counties in which their median sold price decreased compared to March of 2024. That's Alameda, Contra Costa, Marin, and Sonoma. One thing about Marin, though, is that there is a big difference in, I would say, like the price points of homes that did sell in Marin. So some of these counties have a lack of house for sale, so they can have a really expensive home or property that's sold, which really could kind of skew the results here. So this does not mean that if you own a home in Marin, that your home value decreased by 13%. Let's have a look at what happens next month because the stats could kind of paint a different story. This is also true for Napa as well. Napa prices up by 14.2%, but again, likely due to the mix in sales there. San Francisco is up by 4.2%. Santa Clara is up by 11.3%, and sales up by 4.4%. In SoCal, Orange County continues to be the most expensive county in SoCal, at least based on these counties they track from CAR. Prices up by 3.6%, and sales rose by 5.4%. In San Diego, up by about 2%. Median sold price there around $1 million, yet sales decreased by 4%. But in Ventura, sales surged by nearly 24% year over year, yet prices rose by 2.4%. Let's look at the Central Coast. Monterey, prices are flat, yet sales are down. In Santa Cruz, I actually went to school at UC Santa Cruz, $1.4 million. That's a rise of 8% for prices, but sales only increased by 4.5% there. In the Central Valley, Glenn County is one of these counties that decreased in prices year over year, down by 4.4%, even though sales rose by nearly 20%. Of course, feel free to pause and screenshot because, of course, I'm not going to share every single county here. Of course, because of this video would take forever, right? So in Sacramento, we were at $560,000, up 1.8%, but sales are virtually flat year over year. In Placer County, kind of the same scenario regarding prices, only up by 0.9%, but sales rose by 14.4%. In the far north, I won't really go over this so much because the mix in sales really can skew the figures here, especially this right here. Plumas County prices down by 27%. Again, likely due to the mix in sales this last month. Also, we're seeing decreases in prices in Amador, Calaveras County, Del Norte, Humboldt, Mariposa County, Yolo, and Yuba as well. Again, feel free to pause and screenshot. With that said, if you guys are looking to buy or sell a house in the greater Sacramento area or the San Francisco Bay Area, my team and I would love to help you guys. I'll provide my contact information in the video description below. With that said, hope you guys got a lot of value out of today's video. And of course, if you did, then please hit the like button. Also, consider subscribing as well. I make these videos about once every month regarding the California housing market, looking at the statewide averages, then the countywide averages in a separate video. So with that said, have an amazing day. I appreciate you guys so much, and we'll see you in the next video.